All right. For those joining us today, I wanted to welcome you all to our final in the Ask the CEO series. I'm going to review some Zoom related items before we begin tonight's meeting. I'm going to share my screen here. So I know some of you are regulars and are probably used to hearing this, but for those joining us for the first time, welcome to the Zoom webinar platform. This is mainly a listen-in platform. If you are hearing me, you probably already did this, but then if you're not having any audio, please make sure you select the join audio button under your toolbar. If your internet is unstable and you want to make sure you have good audio, please go ahead and dial in with the number on the screen. And the meeting ID is usually the last series of digits on the Zoom link as well. You will have an opportunity to ask your questions tonight. We do recommend that you enter your questions into the Q&A portal. That's on your toolbar. You can also ask your question verbally. You can raise your hand. It's also on your toolbar. I will see a hand icon next to your name. I will then enable your microphone. Please make sure you unmute yourself when your microphone is enabled. I do not recommend questions in the chat box. Those will get buried pretty fast and we'll lose track of them pretty quickly. If you do call in and want to ask your question verbally, you can press *9 to raise your hand and press *6 to unmute yourself. All right, I'm going to stop my screen share here. We're going to get moving along with our program tonight. I do want to introduce you to Director Barbara Keegan. She's from Valley Water's Board of Directors. Director Keegan represents District 2, which includes Santa Clara, south of the Union Pacific Railroad, parts of downtown San Jose, and the Willow Glen, Rose Garden, Fruitdale, Buena Vista, and Burbank communities of San Jose. Please welcome Director Keegan. Oh, Director Keegan, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Albert. I appreciate the kind introduction. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this virtual meeting. As I think we all feel, we enjoy meeting in person rather than virtually, but this is the safest thing for us to do right now. So thank you for your patience as we try and deal with the COVID-19 crisis. So it's important that we still stay connected even during these unsettling times. And so that's why we're having tonight's virtual meeting. This is one of 7 virtual meetings that are to meet the CEO and to talk about issues that are specific to each water district board area. And so this is an opportunity for me to introduce our new CEO of Valley Water to this particular community so he can provide an update on current Valley Water issues. So please join me in welcoming Valley Water's new CEO, Rick Callender. Rick, please take it away.
Thank you, Director Keegan, and I want to welcome everybody to the last in the series of the Ask the CEO. I'm pleased to see that several folks that have joined us at all of the past meetings have joined us again. So hopefully, if I miss anything, they can point it out and I can make sure that I add it in. And it's really my pleasure tonight to meet with you and to share a bit of my background as well as my vision for Valley Water and be able to share with you where we're going and what's hot on the plate of Valley Water right now. Tonight, I want to say welcome to the residents of the city of Santa Clara in the areas of downtown San Jose, Willow Glen, the Rose Garden, Fruitdale, Buena Vista, and the Burbank communities of San Jose. And first, thank you again for attending this gathering. As I've said in the past ones, I really do want this to be a two-way conversation. I think it's important that we have the ability to talk back and forth and be able to answer your questions to the good of the neighborhood and to the communities. And so, feel free to put things into the chat or fit into the Q&A box if you want to put in the chat where you're from and the area that you're from. Love to see that as well. Also, let us know what brought you here today if you feel so inclined to do so. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll go into a little bit, go into some of the projects. Thank you for hitting record, Albert. So I've been at Valley Waters for 24 and a half years. I came up through the area of government relations out there advocating for the residents of Santa Clara County and ensuring that we're working hard to bring in federal dollars, state dollars, et cetera. So over the course of my time in government relations, I brought over well in $500 million through my teams working on projects and bringing in for federally subsidized projects that are in this valley. Prior to being at Valley Water, I worked for economic and social opportunities for a gentleman named Tommy Fulcher. He actually lived in the neighborhood that I'm talking to right now. So it's good to basically be able to reach out to one of my mentors' neighborhoods. Worked for Mayor Susan Hammer as the special assistant to Mayor Susan Hammer. I worked for Ron Dellums. My background in education, I have an industrial engineering and technology degree from California State University, Chico. Completed most of my coursework here for the public administration degree from San Jose State. And I'm an alumni of the Northwestern California School of Law and a member of the State Bar. So as you see, I may be new to the position, but I'm not new to Valley Water, and I'm definitely not new to the area. I actually grew up in the Blossom Valley area of San Jose. I went to Santa Teresa High School, went to grade school, went to Bernal Intermediate, as well as Blossom Valley Intermediate. So I really do know this area. Right now, I live directly off of Coyote Creek. And so I'm not in Director Keegan's district, but a little bit further north. I live about 1.5 miles from Rock Springs. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we talk about some of the projects and some of the things that we're going through. So Albert, if you can go ahead and share the screen, I'd like to go ahead and talk about some of the projects. We're going to be talking about Anderson Dam seismic retrofit, the Coyote Creek flood protection project, the Parallel East Central Pipeline project, the Upper Guadalupe River flood protection project, and then finally about Measure S, which would renew Santa Clara Valley Water District Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program. So let's go ahead and hop into Anderson Dam. Many of you may be aware that the Anderson Dam seismic retrofit project is one of our highest priorities. That's one of the things that I want to definitely keep our foot on the gas pedal to make sure we can get this thing done on time. We recently held a virtual public meeting to inform the community on the upcoming activities related to Anderson Dam, the reservoir. Many of you may be aware, but the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or otherwise mostly commonly called FERC, basically issued a drawdown order to us at the end, I believe it was, of last year. Basically, the order said that we had to basically empty the reservoir or bring it down to dead pool by October, starting on October 1st. So we opened up the outlet on October 1st, and we are beginning to draw down the reservoir. We do expect it to be pretty much drawn down by the end of this year, depending on what the rains look like, obviously. We expect the project has now been broken up into 2 parts. First, we're going to be dealing with basically a low flow tunnel. It's a tunnel construction that will deal with the release of the water from the reservoir. So that's a tunnel construction. That's expected to begin in the spring. And then full completion of the Anderson Dam seismic retrofit project is not anticipated to be completed by 2031. It's a very large project. However, when this project is done, when this project is finished, this will enable us to provide water supply and enough drinking water to support almost 1 million people for a full year. One of the questions that I've gotten in almost every single neighborhood is, what does that mean for our water supply? You can fit the other 9 reservoirs, we have 10, the other 9 reservoirs that you have into Anderson Dam. What does that mean for our water supply? Well, here's the one thing I want you to be rest assured of. I think our board is really taking a very strong leadership position to make sure that we're not going to have any risk to our water supply. We have investments in Kern County, which is basically called a semi-tropic water bank, where it basically has 350,000 acre feet of water. That is enough to serve 3.5 million people for 1 year. We're looking at a variety of investments in different projects, as well as we have a robust state and federal water supply. And we are continuing to negotiate for additional water supply so that we will not see a localized drought as a result of Anderson being empty. We're going to be putting in a lot of work, and hopefully we'll be able to see good results. And maybe it would take slightly less than 10 years, but these kind of major construction projects do take a while to get done. And as most of you know, let's go ahead and go over to Coyote. The water from Anderson basically flows into Coyote Creek. That's the outlet, which is another one of our highest priority projects. What we're looking at right now is because of the low flow outlet tunnel, we have to make sure that we have to make sure that as we're releasing water from Anderson, that as we're building the project, that their protections are downstream on Coyote. So that's a part of what we're working with FERC on, is to make sure that the flood protection is there for Coyote Creek as we build the low flow outlet. However, the entire flood protection project for Coyote Creek, so you will not see the kind of floods that you saw in Coyote Creek in 27, is expected to be completed by the end of 2025. What I do want you to do is make sure that you have signed up, and I believe you should have some information in the chat. If you click on that, you can sign up to receive information, but we will be reaching out to the community in the next few months to update everyone on the Coyote Creek Flood Protection Project, as well as the Anderson Project. So please sign up. We'll make sure that we update you on it. I did want to talk a little bit about the 2017 flooding. I did mention that I live directly off of Coyote Creek. Literally, if you look out my back window, which I can see right now, I am doing this from home, I literally can see Coyote Creek. So the folks that flooded in Rock Springs, that's less than 1.5 miles from them. Those are my friends. Those are my neighbors. Those are the voters that I know. Those are constituents that I represent. I grew up in this community. So being able to see the kind of devastation that happened to the folks that are downstream, I had many friends, even in houses in Director Keegan's district that were flooded. Yes, I hear from them. And I'm going to tell you, I'm truly sorry for what the community went through. It's unfortunate that you had to first deal with flooding, and then you've had to deal with a long legal process after that. I've said this before, I want to say it loud and clear again. The seat that I sit in, I want to make sure this process ends quickly, and I want it to end fairly, and under my leadership, that is my intent. You are our residents, you are our neighbors. You are not people that are fighting the big building of the Santa Clara Valley Water District. We're going to make sure that this ends fairly and quickly. I can't say that any more strongly. And I want you to know that Valley Water, we serve all communities in Santa Clara County. I don't care if you're at the top of the income ladder, at the very bottom of the income ladder. We are here to serve you, and under my leadership, and those of you that know me, know that I'm speaking the truth when I talk about that no person will be left behind when it relates to Valley Water and making sure that we have representation for all. I've long been involved in civil rights community. I've long been involved in environmental justice and social justice. And so I know that hopefully you can take my word true on this. And that's where we are. And I look forward if folks have any questions or clarification, but hopefully I've been clear. Let's keep talking about some other projects. The Parallel East and the Central Pipeline Project. So this project involves the inspection and replacement of distressed water pipeline sections and supporting components in the Parallel East and Central pipelines. These inspections and repair improve the system's reliability and efficiency so they continue to deliver safe, clean water to you and all the Santa Clara County residents. The work will occur in several phases, and the first phase completed in spring of 2019. The next phase is expected to complete in winter of 2021. The work on the Central Pipeline will be located in the southeastern portion of Director Keegan's district. It kind of flows into the East San Jose area. So it's, if you're familiar with what our districts are, it flows more towards Director Estremera's district, but you will see impacts in the southeastern portion of Director Keegan's district. Let's move over to the Upper Guadalupe Flood Protection Project. This is reaches 7 through 12. Many of you have known that this project has been on the books for a very long time. We've been trying our best to get this done. This is one of the projects that I've been lobbying the federal government for dollars for a very long time to move forward. This project is basically it's along a 5.5 mile section of the Upper Guadalupe River between Interstate 280 and Blossom Hill Road. These improvements include channel widening, the construction of flood walls, levees, the replacement of road crossings, and a vegetation planting along parts of the river. This will reduce the frequency of floods and bank erosion. With the improvements will also improve water quality and give fish access to about 12 miles of habitat within upstream project. Again, I mentioned this is a federally authorized project with the Army Corps of Engineers. Just in this past fiscal year, the Army Corps of Engineers received $1.5 million to pair with our $1.5 million from Valley Water to undergo a general reevaluation report. So they're basically reevaluating this project to say, can we do this project? This is partially why we need Measure S. We have long been putting our fate in the hands of the federal government that have not been showing up with their part. So what we're saying is, let's build local projects with local dollars, and that's what we're trying to move forward with. We need to protect these communities from flooding. If you recall, in just 2017, it almost flooded. In 2018, I know the mayor was out there along the Upper Guadalupe knocking on doors himself at 3 a.m. telling people to evacuate because we were inches from seeing it flood into the neighborhood. Thankfully, thankful to God, it did not flood. However, this is exactly one of the things that you see in Measure S. So speaking of Measure S, I'm going to go ahead and jump into Measure S. And Albert, I think the best thing to do on this one is to actually just play a video, and then I'll talk a little bit after the video. So Albert, if you can go ahead and hit play, this kind of gives you a sense of what Measure S is about.
What is the Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program? The Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program was overwhelmingly approved by 74% of Santa Clara County voters in 2012. The program identified 5 priorities developed in collaboration with thousands of residents and stakeholders. Priority A, a safe, reliable water supply. Building sustainable, locally controlled water supply projects that are resilient to emergencies, disasters, and droughts. Priority B, reduce toxins and contaminants in our waterways. Providing a safe and clean supply of water, ensuring our waterways are protected from toxins, contaminants, and pollution. Priority C, protect our water supply from earthquakes and natural disasters. Protecting our water supply, water quality, dams and flood protection channels from public emergencies, earthquakes, natural disasters, and climate change. Priority D, restore habitat and provide open space. Protecting our natural areas by working to restore habitats along creeks and the bay. Priority E, provide flood protection. Funding projects that protect our homes, schools, and businesses from the threat of floods. The program helps us care for waterways and provide flood protection to homes, schools, and businesses. As we contend with public emergencies, natural disasters, population growth, and uncertain future water supplies, we are exploring how to replace and renew the existing program to address these challenges.
Thank you for playing that for me, Albert. So the one thing that many folks may not know about this is that this program was built, I call it, by the people, for the people. We had more than 21,000 residents between February and June basically be able to provide us input on what they wanted to see in a safe, clean water measure. We'd reached out to folks, we'd reached out to many in the community and said, here are the challenges that we're having with the current program. The current program is broken. In the first 5 years of the program, we expended all of the dollars, 100% of the dollars that was allocated towards the removal of homeless encampments. So what we were doing is pulling from other programs, pulling from other projects in order to deal with the growing, burgeoning homeless situation within Santa Clara County. We also had projects where, for example, look at the Coyote project. In the Safe Clean Water measure that we currently are in, $35 million was provided to basically look at how do we provide for flood protection and to do the study. There wasn't money for the actual construction of the project. So what the board had to do was grab the dollars from Upper Penitencia area and then move those dollars to the Coyote area. So now you've got people in the Upper Penitencia area saying, wait, what about me? We wanted our project for our community. Well, all the communities deserve this, and this is what Measure S is about. So in terms of the 5 priorities that you heard, those are the 5 priorities that it's going to deal with. The questions, and as we were dealing with this, the things that we heard the most from 17,000 people out of the 21, 17,000 pretty much had comments independently, so that they provided us independently. Number 1 comment, fix Anderson Dam and fix it quickly. Number 2 comment is we want to make sure that you're providing us safe, clean water and that you do not have a situation of where you can't provide water in a drought. Number 3 comment was homelessness. That was, and then there was a variety of other comments that were included, but literally that is what we heard from the majority of the people that were out there. So what I do want to acknowledge is that not only in the Safe Clean Water measure, as we were building it, we've also heard from many of you. Many of you have sent in complaints. Many of you have said, what are you doing about the burgeoning homeless encampments that are growing, especially during the times of COVID in our creekways? What are you doing about the increase of homeless activity in the large rivers and the creeks around our county? Often what happens is people contact us and we say, well, that's not on our property, that's on their property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what Measure S does is it not only provides basically the reissue of those dollars to basically to deal with the removal of homeless encampments, but it allows us to do something different. What we've been doing up in for the Safe Clean Water program has been around for 20 years. And what we've been doing is just removing the encampments, homeless encampment abatement. That's obviously not working. So what we have now is 500,000 is allocated in the program each year for us to provide social services. And I shouldn't say us to provide social services, because we'll be working with other partner agencies to provide social services to help remove the people from the creeks so that they can move into permanent situations and permanent housing so they don't return back to the creeks and the encampments. So what we're trying to do is basically bring a humane approach to addressing the homeless situation. And we hope that this is going to affect all our communities. I'll remind you that I live off of Coyote Creek. Coyote Creek has the #1 complaints of homeless issues, the #1 instances of violence in terms of homeless issues in Santa Clara County. Since I have been actually as I have been watching the homeless complaints grow, and I've watched our crews go out there, I hadn't seen 1 week as our crews were dealing in the creek where they hadn't been threatened, unfortunately, with a gun, with a knife, or otherwise by situations dealing with homeless encampments. People said, oh, are all the homeless violent? No, but what would you do if someone came up and you thought that even a young person with a fish net going to count fish was probably there to help remove your home? That's what we're doing. So the social services is so important so that we can change the situation for the community that we all live in and that we all love. And so at that, I think, Albert, I'm going to say, let's go ahead and go into some Q&A now so we can get about 40 minutes of Q&A.
Sure thing. So I just want to remind everyone, please enter your questions into the Q&A portal that's going to be on your toolbar. If you also want to ask your question verbally, use the raise hand feature of Zoom. And then if you're on Facebook Live, please feel free to comment on Facebook Live your questions and we'll flip that into our Zoom webinar here. We do have a question right now in Zoom. This is from Jonah. What do you hope the new racial equity, diversity, and inclusion positions at Valley Water will accomplish, and what inspired the creation of these positions?
That's an excellent question. Thank you for the question, Jonah. So one of the things is, as I was interviewing for this position, that was one of the things that I had basically that I said I wanted to create a racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. No, this is not just based on the times that we're living in. This is not just based on the fact that we all know that institutional racism has run through the bloodstreams of many governments and that many people had been left behind. I'll point right to the community that I live next door to in terms of Coyote Creek. Coyote Creek was an area that, since they did not meet the cost-benefit ratio, they weren't planned for it in order to get flood protection from the Corps of Engineers. Well, why is it that you can look at one community and you can get a different result from the Corps of Engineers versus a poor community and they can't? So when I talk about racial equity, diversity, inclusion in the office that I created, how do we have equity in terms of the seats that I'm in? I shouldn't be sitting here being the first African-American CEO of this organization that's nearly 100 years old. I shouldn't have been brought into this organization in the early 90s, and I was brought in because of the fact that the NAACP had a consent decree with Valley Water over issues of dealing with African Americans in promotions. And so I came over to try to say, is there someone strong enough that's going to be able to deal with the institutional racism that runs in the veins? And wasn't just Valley Water. I don't want folks to think that, oh, every organization is racist, but we have to understand that race does play a factor in many things. So when I created the Office of Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, it was to acknowledge that let's make sure that everyone was brought in. The way that I've described it is, if you are paying our taxes, if you are drinking our water, if you are receiving our services, you should basically be able to have a say in what you're doing, and you should be able to look at the reflection of the person, and the person should look like everyone that's in the community. Yes, we could do better. When I go out to conferences throughout the state, I can tell you especially in the 90s, you'd walk into a water conference and what you would see is very few women, and you'd see a bunch of generally Caucasian men in cowboy hats. Literally 50% wearing cowboy hats. That's the experience I was in. And I said, whoa, this is what it looks like for me. Have we gotten better as an industry? No, we really haven't. But what we can do is we can make sure that everyone is included. We can make sure that no diverse community is left behind. We can make sure is when we're having conversations about what does it mean for a project in our community, that we're bringing everybody in. And we're not just talking racial equity, we're talking about diversity. One of the things that I've learned, and I never thought about it, but as we went into COVID, we started doing virtual tours. Do you know, we heard from a lot of people that were in the disabled community, and they said, thank you for doing this. I have always wanted to go on these tours, but the tours were never made accessible to me. Well, those are the kind of things that you forget when you don't have people there that are able to remind you of the kind of different situations and the different diversity that you need. That's a very good question. Hopefully I've answered the question. Jonah, feel free to follow up. But yes, those positions, there's 4 positions that will be part of our 900 positions that we were looking at racial equity, diversity, inclusion, and inclusion in all respects, not just in the community, not just outwardly, but also inwardly. Let's make sure that everyone is included and no one is left behind.
All right, Jonah gives us his thanks via the Q&A portal. And just as a reminder, please enter your questions in the Q&A portal. When you enter it through chat, it looks like this to me in a small box. And so it helps me immensely to enter it through your Q&A portal. I want to shift gears, Rick, to a pre-submitted question from a Nagley Park resident, Jeffrey Hare. He asks, why is the district not proposing to take care of the largest watershed in its jurisdiction to restore flow capacity to Estonix Creek? And he has some other questions, but I'll start with that first.
Let's take one at a time. Let's take one at a time. So he's saying, why are we proposing not to take care of flow capacity in Coyote Creek, excuse me, in the Coyote watershed, which includes Coyote Creek? Well, that's absolutely inaccurate. If you look at the new program that's being proposed for safe, clean water, the one thing that, and I have some of these meetings, sometimes I forget what I haven't touched on, but the one thing that's also included in Measure S is to basically stop the finger pointing. I talked about the finger pointing on the homeless and whose property it's on, but we get that same level of finger pointing when it deals with who, you get a down tree that's creating a blockage, everyone's complaining, and they said, whose property is the tree on? And everybody's pointing to everyone else, and the resident just wants the tree gone. Well, this program does something different. This program allows for individual residents, it allows for individual agencies and for others to apply to us to basically be a one-stop shop and say, we have a down tree or whatever that's on our property, we have trash, we have whatever's on our property, and allows for funding so that if it's near the creeks, if it's near the streams, that there will be funding for us to deal with it so that we have a one-stop shop. People point to us, we can say we'll do it. We send over an application to whomever it belongs to, and rather than tell the resident, you are responsible for clearing out something, you know what, we are the largest public works agency in this valley. We can do it better, we can do it cheaper, and we can do it through a grant, and we can do it through Measure S. And so that's part of why I believe Measure S is very important for the valley. It allows us to do and address exactly what Mr. Hare has asked.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to jump to his third question since it's related to capacity a little bit here. If the district's position is that adjoining property owners are responsible for trash and debris removal, why is the district not demanding the city clean the trails and creek areas it owns in downtown, particularly where they have built bridges and other obstacles in the channel?
Well, right now, like I said, the system that we're on, if somebody calls and says there's trash in X area, there's trash on X property, right now we look to see whose property it's on, and then we call the city, we call the individual resident, we call whomever is the owner. It could be a school district, et cetera. If you look at the Rock Springs area, it's a mishmash of who owns it. One piece is the city, one piece is the San Jose, Franklin McKinley, one piece is San Jose Unified, literally right next to each other, and so that doesn't work. What Measure S addresses is just that. You can call us, we will go in, we will work, we'll send in the application, and we can work together. People don't care whose property it's on. People just want it removed. And so what we're trying to do is come up with a one-stop shop, a better solution, a better way to make it work.
All right, great. And his final question from Jeff is, why did the district allow a brand new housing development, Borrello Estates, to be constructed at the toe of a seismic unsafe earthen dam, this is Anderson Dam, at the same time continuing to propose, as it has since 1973, to remove historic homes in downtown San Jose? Let me know if you need to repeat that question or you have it.
No, I got it. So here's the thing. Valley Water doesn't have land use authority. We can't make land use decisions. We do comment on environmental impact reports for developments that are going to be built. If you're going to be building a development, it's going to have an impact on our dams, on our creekways, on the watersheds, on the basically a lot of things which I defined. We're regulated by something called like the waters of the US and the waters of California. But we try to regulate things that are around our creeks in the same way. We don't have land use. We cannot tell the cities what to do. However, that exact development that he's asking about, we did comment on the EIR. We did say that we had concerns with that project. We did say that that project should not be built in the way that it was built. So the cities make the final decision. My understanding is that the city said our comments were not basically they could be mitigated, and they built the property and they allowed the building of the property. So no, we don't just sit idly by. No, we don't just say, oh, we wish they did something different. We speak up. We try to speak truth to power on the projects and try to make sure these kind of projects that are going to threaten our valley don't get built. Do we have the ability to stop them? No, we don't.
All right, great, thank you. And now we're going to move back to the Q&A portal, and we'll jump to a raised hand in a bit as well. This question comes from Susan. Why do you need to propose, or sorry, why do you need a new proposition to make plans if the funding is just supposedly not being changed in amount?
So a new proposition. So here's what we're doing is the program that we put forward in the Safe Clean Water. That's actually a good program, and hopefully I'm answering it. So Susan, if I didn't answer, please chime in again. But the program that we had is actually a reshuffling of the program. There's different projects, there's different priorities, there's different programs. When we put the program in front of the voters, basically we say, here's how the money is going to be spent. If you go to safecleanwater.org, you download the plan, you can see exactly where the dollars are going to be spent. So we're not just changing plans or making different plans. We have reallocated funding to where we believe it should go. We have made major changes as well as added in additional projects that will be built in the community. So hopefully I've addressed that, but that's why we need a new measure. The measure has to be voted on in order to make the changes to the projects the way that we have.
All right, great, thank you. I'm going to shift over to raise hand here. This is going to be Ted Smith. I'm going to enable your microphone, Ted, and go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Rick, I have a question about Measure S and about why it provides only 20-year protection for those of us who live in this part of the valley along the creek, but 100-year protection for others. And as I see it under the proposition or the measure, Rock Springs, Nagley, Olander, mobile home parks, all the areas that got flooded in 2017 would only get 5% flood protection or a 20-year event, whereas the other more affluent areas mentioned in the KPIs are slated for 1% protection or a flood every 100 years. And I'm looking at section E1 KPI for our section of the creek, which provides this project is to plan, design, and construct improvements along approximately 9 miles of Coyote Creek between Montague Expressway and Tully Road in San Jose. The primary objective is to provide protection from the floods up to the level that occurred on February 21st, 2017, equivalent to approximately a 5% flood or 20-year event. Why is this, and why should our area get the worst, that gets the worst floods, get the least protection?
Well, Ted, I thank you for the question, and I appreciate that. I want to remind you, I live in this very community that you're asking this question about. The flood protection that Measure S provides for is for basically immediate protection for the community. Ted, I want to remind you that I have moved forward with trying to request that the Corps of Engineers reevaluate this. We're trying to basically ensure that we can bring potentially 100% flood protection in the future. So as we are building this project, what we're trying to do is also at the same exact time have designed the project and design all the documents so that the Corps can basically reevaluate this to look at exactly what you're talking about. Not all of the communities are going to get 100% flood protection. I can guarantee you that. If you look at some of the other projects, that not all areas will get 100%. I think if you also look at Upper Guadalupe, as I told you, that the Corps is doing a general reevaluation report. Well, what that means is they're going to reevaluate all of the project, and then certain portions of the project are likely going to get either no Corps support or it's going to end up with lesser flood protection. The reason why we have this measure is so that we can provide the immediate flood protection that Coyote Creek needs. I'm hoping that once we finish with the documents and the reports that we need for the Corps of Engineers, maybe we can have the Corps basically reevaluate this in another kind of aspect. Right now, there have been bills that have passed through Congress that address exactly what you're talking about. We've got our socially disadvantaged neighborhoods, and this is the environmental justice issue and why I've been fighting for my entire life. I believe that everyone should basically get equitable flood protection. Why is it that the Coyote Creek neighborhoods were left behind, before you had people like me and Director Estermeyer forcing it into the last Safe Clean Water? Was because people said, well, there's no cost benefit. Well, you know what? those folks that are just renters, they deserve the same benefit that we do. What is the benefits that these people will get from this flood protection project? Well, we will be able to go in continuously to clean out the creeks and to provide for the level of support that that community needs. Right now, if you look at what happened in 2017, everybody was pointing fingers. Whose responsibility was it to clean out the down trees, et cetera, in the creeks? And it was everybody pointing fingers. This allows us to continue to address it. I don't want this community to be just like Alviso and not being able to have the operations and maintenance go into the long-term portions of this project where they end back up in the floodplain. And I don't actually know that I addressed this, but if you look at what's happened right now in Alviso, my family's been out here moved out in 1976. In 1982, I'm sure, Ted, you've been out here for a long time. You've been a long-term battler for environmental justice. That I do know. In 1982, when they flooded in the Alviso area, what had happened is Valley Water came in and they built a project after that in the late 80s, early 90s, and then we didn't maintain it. So you know what? I had a meeting just about a week and a half ago. It's actually 2 weeks ago now, with the Lower Guadalupe community to tell them that you're back in the floodplain. You're back at risk. We have not done the job that we were supposed to do with maintaining that. So these people are back at risk again. I do not want to see that happen. I do not want to see it happen in the community that I care about. And what I will continue to do is continue to make sure that we're fighting for all disadvantaged communities, including the folks and my neighbors. Like I said, I live here, including my neighbors, to make sure if we can get the Corps of Engineers to reevaluate, to relook at this project, we can show a different kind of cost benefit. That you're saying that costs shouldn't just be based on the value of your home and where you live, but you should be able to look at environmental benefit. You should be able to look at economic justice and social justice benefits, so that we can raise the cost benefit ratio. Have we gotten there yet? No. That's partially why we are. So right now, our goal is to make sure that the flood of record, which was the 2017 flood, does not happen in this community again. Can we do better? The answer is absolutely, if we have the funding to do better. But this is what Measure S fixes. It provides the funding to do better into the future, and I hope that we'll be able to revisit.
All right, great. Moving on to the next question here in the Q&A portal. Again, just as a reminder, feel free to ask your questions on the Q&A portal or raising your hand. We have a question from, I hope I'm saying this correctly, Sohila Mazayan. We had 2 major fires in the past month in your property behind our houses. What are you going to do about it so that our houses are not engulfed in fire when it happens again in your heavily wooded area between Willow Street and Alma Avenue?
So Willow Street and Alma, it's probably, I'm assuming that's over by the Williamsburg Park area is what they may be referring to. I'm not positive. However, one of the things that we tell folks to do is if you see criminal activity that is occurring, please call 911. That's the first thing, and that's obviously what we want you to do. In terms of the removal of encampments, which I believe is what you're referring to, right now we just had a meeting with the police department for San Jose today, where we're going to be starting to move towards actions again, removing some of the encampments. So that's a little piece of good news that's going to occur. So Lilia, I'm going to ask that you email me so I can know exactly where this is at ceo@valleywater.org, so we can make a determination of exactly where this is, and so we can go in there and address it. And I'm assuming this is an encampment. But one of the things is COVID has done is COVID has prevented us from removing any encampments. The advice that we're getting from the CDC, and if you go to the CDC's website, basically the guidance that they have is do not remove the homeless encampments. Yes, you can go in and clean up garbage, but do not remove homeless encampments because of the fact that you could be spreading COVID from different neighborhoods to different neighborhoods, as well as the simple fact that the social services that are coming in to test these folks are not or will not know who the people are or where they have gone. So please email me. This is one of the things that we're trying to address, and this is why I point back to Measure S, with the fact that yes, we ran out of money in the first 5 years. Yes, the population and the encampments have grown by this much. Yes, we have a responsibility. We can only take care of the responsibilities that we have if we have the funding to be able to take care of it. Director Keegan, I see that you unmuted.
Yes, I just wanted to add that I believe this resident is probably one of my neighbors. I think that between Willow and Alma is near Long Street. So this is part of the area that I walk on a regular basis. And yes, it is a problem. And I concur with your comments, Mr. Callender. I think that it's a challenge with the COVID crisis, more opportunities to help address this and other issues that are quality of life issues for our residents.
Indeed. So please, I saw she said she would be sending me an email. I'll make sure that I pass that along. We'll have crews out there in the next 24 hours in order to check it out after getting your email.
All right, moving on to our next question here. This one came through the chat box. It's a little buried. This is from Kay Irvin. I'm from Olander and I live in the Coyote Creek flood zone. Since there aren't any new projects in this parcel tax redo except for Pacheco Reservoir, the main benefit of the measure seems to be the ability to borrow up to $300 million to fund projects, which could cost $650 million to repay. How would this borrowing benefit us upfront, and how would it impact the ability to fund projects after 2035?
Okay, the Olander neighborhood, I'm not sure, I can't immediately recall where Olander is and if they get any flood protection benefit, but I can tell you, I have seen complaints on Olander as it relates to the homeless issue. So yes, there's a benefit there. I think what they're asking about is bonding and why would we bond up front? Well, let me explain this to you. And this is the way I explain it for people like buying a house. If you want to buy a house, the reason why people get mortgages is they can get the money up front in order to purchase the house at the value that it is. If you're going to save up all of the dollars to buy a $1 million house and you're saving up little by little every year and you think your dollars will spend the same a decade from now than it will now, it won't. That money that you saved, you will never get that home. That's exactly what we're doing. When we bond for projects, what we're doing is we get all the money up front so we can immediately build the project. Not only immediately build the project, but if you look at the amount of jobs that Safe Clean Water creates, it creates 40,000 jobs for this community. That's a lot of jobs. These are not jobs within Valley Water's business area. These are jobs out in the community. This is going to employ the consultants. This is going to employ the construction workers. This is going to employ the attorneys that are providing advice to not only Valley Water and others that basically need to support this. So what is the benefit? The benefit is getting it now. If you look at the first few projects, projects that we had for basically Clean Safe Creeks as well as a Safe Clean Water right now, it was pay as you go. When you pay as you go, you've got to wait till you collect all the money and then you go build the project. That is not a good way to do business. People want flood protection now. People are flooding now. They don't want to wait for 10 years for us to build the project. They want us to get the dollars now and to move quickly. This is about addressing homelessness now. This is about addressing the need for safe clean water now. This is about building our Anderson Dam now. People don't want to see us sit on public works projects until we get the money, and then our excuse is, wait, we're waiting till we get all the money in hand so then we can fix it. That is not a good way to do business, and that is not what we heard from those 21,000 people that want protections, that want clean water, and that want homeless issues addressed now.
All right, thank you. We do have a comment from earlier in the night, just from Jessica Gonzalez, just saying hello, and just that she's new to Silicon Valley and just hear your vision, goals, and expectations for the community. So just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you for stopping by, Jessica. Hopefully you registered to vote and you do your civic duty.
All right. Just as a reminder to everyone in attendance, please feel free to raise your hand to ask a verbal question or put your question into the Q&A portal. And for those joining us on Facebook, again, you can put in a comment in the box there and we'll forward it in. As of right now, we're looking clear on the Q&A. Rick.
So one of the things that I haven't addressed that I did want to address that has come up in other communities is often people have said, well, is Valley Water, we just had all of these fires, you know, climate change caused the fires. And if people don't think climate change caused the fires, don't forget it was these lightning storms that we had, like we lived on the East Coast, that caused all of these fires. He said, are you ready for the PSPS, for the public safety power shutoffs of PG&E? Are you prepared for the wildfires? Well, I can tell you, yes, we have an active emergency operations center. You'll actually see some things that are also added on within Measure S to basically also address some of these issues. But we actively test our water. People are worried about the fires and what that may have done to the reservoirs. We are actively testing the water. We've seen nothing that would have caused us concern in terms of the wildfires. For the PSPS, we are actively actually looking at right now not only a new power plant and to make sure that we're addressing it, but we do have, if we were to see a week-long outage, we can make sure that we can still provide healthy, clean, safe water supply for this valley. So Valley Water is prepared to basically address a lot of the things that you're seeing. However, what COVID has shown us, what the wildfires have shown us, and what the power safety shutoffs have shown us is that, yes, you need well-funded local government in order to make sure that we're providing the expectations of what the citizens have. If you would believe that I said we would have seen rolling blackouts in 2020, if I said that, people would have said, rolling blackouts, that was 20 years ago. We're never going to see that. We saw rolling blackouts. If I'd say that public health would be an issue because we'd be doing this from home, I would rather be meeting with you and you're out in the community. I'd rather be, I can't think of I think it's the Roosevelt Community Center, generally we met in Director Keegan's district. I'd rather be talking to you one-on-one, but a global pandemic has kept us in our homes, and this is how we're meeting now in the community. So the need for well-funded local governments to basically provide for clean, safe water and health and safety and health, it's real. It's definitely real. I see a hand up, Albert.
All right, great. So this is a question from Lisa Rudder. I'm going to enable your microphone. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi. I wanted to follow up on Jeff's question regarding the new neighborhood near the dam versus the historic homes in Nagley Park. I understood you to say that you did comment on the EIR for the new neighborhood, but you said Valley Water doesn't have land use. Maybe you meant they don't have land use purview, and then you said that's the city. But it's my understanding is exercising eminent domain in Nagley Park. Am I right?
I'm sorry, this is first. I heard exercising eminent domain in Nagley Park, but I didn't hear the part right before that. Could you repeat that?
Oh, maybe the part right before that was that you said that Valley Water doesn't, I wrote down that you said Valley Water doesn't have land use. Maybe that, and you said the city does. Did you mean the city gets to decide this, not Valley Water? It's their decision?
Yes, so there's two different things that I think you're referring to, and so I'm going to try to unpack this for you here. So I think, and please, Ms. Rudder, come back in and answer the question if I haven't. So when I said Valley Water doesn't have land use authority, we don't do land use planning. The cities are the sole holders of the land use planning authority. So the project that you're talking about that was at the base of Anderson Dam, and Albert, you'll have to remind me of the name of the project.
Bolero Estates?
Bolero Estates. Yes, we can only comment on the EIR. We don't provide zoning authority. We cannot do zoning. We don't do housing or land use approvals. All we can do is comment on that. So when I say we don't have land use authority, no, we do not. Then I believe a second portion of your question is you'd said, but yet Valley Water can exercise eminent domain in order to build, create, to finish projects. The answer is yes. We do have the ability, as all most local governments do, have the ability to move towards eminent domain if as a tool in the toolbox, but that is the last thing that we do in terms of working with communities. We don't just move towards eminent domain. That is the absolute last action that we work with as a tool in the toolbox. You know, the board of directors have to basically make a decision when we do go towards eminent domain, but that is not our first step. That's the absolute last step. But yes, we do have the ability as a local government to exercise eminent domain powers in order to complete health and safety projects for the community. It has to be basically, and it has to be dealing with that. So if you're talking about eminent domain, I suspect you could be tying it into a flood protection project. I didn't hear where you said you reside, but it's likely tied into a flood protection project. Ms. Rudder, if I did not answer your question, I ask you to raise your hand and then we'll bring you back in.
Ms. Rudder, go ahead if you would like to just confirm whether or not we covered it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight.
All right, we do have a question in the chat box here from Kay Irvin. Staff said Anderson and Coyote Creek are fully funded. So what are the projects that will be expedited with the borrowed funds, along with at least $45 million raised each year from the tax? And this is Measure S, I'm assuming.
Staff have never said Anderson and Coyote Creek are fully funded. I'm not sure where that's coming from. However, that's incorrect again, along with at least $45 million raised each year from the tax. I can't unpack that, but I think she's probably talking about what projects are there. Well, I did talk about the fact that Upper Guadalupe has not received federal funds except for now the general reevaluation report. We do know that we will not be able to complete that project. If you look at San Francisco in the Palo Alto neighborhood, they basically pulled off the Corps of Engineers. And so now that's a fully locally funded project unless we can find other ways to get dollars and to pull it in. Anderson is not fully funded. And now that we've seen the split and the FERC action on Anderson, we know that costs are probably going to go up in order to fix Anderson. It was split from one project into two because of the fact that they ordered us to empty Anderson and to build the low flow outlet first versus doing the project as once. And as you know, as you slow down or as you change construction projects, the costs go up. So Ms. Irvin, I believe you are mistaken on whatever information that you're relying on. Albert, do we have other questions?
Ms. Irvin had a follow-up comment that the staff said that at the last Anderson Dam meeting.
Staff said at the last Anderson Dam meeting that we had dual paths of funding for this. We would, Anderson is included not only in water rates, but it's also included in Safe Clean Water. If you see, there was additional dollars added into the Safe Clean Water for the fact that we're doing Anderson. And again, we expect the cost to continue to go up for Anderson as we're trying to move towards the federally mandated actions that have been thrust upon us. If people believe that the state and the federal government want to throw dollars at local government, and that it's almost an impossible task and that we shouldn't be funding things locally, we'll never get anything done. The reality is the state has not shown that they're willing to fund things at the local level, and the federal government has basically been pulling off. If the general reevaluation report from the Corps of Engineers that they paid $1.5 million for, I can sit here, talk about mock my words and what people are saying at the federal level. The reality is they're doing the report so they can say that the cost benefit ratio of Upper Guadalupe is no longer feasible and that the benefit ratio is below. It's basically, they look to have a benefit ratio above 1.0 in order to build the project. I'm going to tell you right where I sit right now, they've issued reports where said lately that the cost benefit ratio of the entire project is slightly above 1.0. It's 1.10. So that means as they reevaluate this, I'm going to guarantee you they're going to say, oh, it's below 1.0. We won't be able to do the entire project. However, we have this little section that maybe we can contribute a little bit of dollars towards, or they won't at all, and they'll try to basically deauthorize the project. That's the reality of the world that we live in. These are local dollars that will stay local, that can't be taken from us, that are going to take care of clean, safe water, that are going to take care of the homeless situation in a humane way. I know all of us see what's going on in our community, and this is probably the most affordable way that we can deal with this. And so I want to thank you for the question. Albert, do we have any other questions out there? Because if not, I definitely have a question for Director Keegan.
We're in the clear. Go ahead, Rick.
All right, so Director Keegan, the one question I wanted to ask for you, and please feel free to elaborate. We got about 7 minutes left here, but you led the public works efforts in Sunnyvale as their public works director. As a public works expert, you really do have true technical expertise in building public works projects. Can you share what's your favorite Valley Water public works project?
Well, that's a great question, and thank you for asking it. My favorite public works project that was done with Valley Water is the Lower Guadalupe. And that was a project where the city of San Jose partnered with Valley Water District to do the flood control improvements. And I was fortunate enough as a young engineer, this was many, many, many years ago, to be able to manage the construction of the underground box culvert that runs underneath Waz Way in downtown San Jose by the Children's Discovery Museum. So that was a great project. It was really interesting. I got to work with a lot of Valley Water people. I got to work with some folks, elected officials in Washington, D.C., and it was really a big thrill. And, because we've traveled to Washington, D.C. on lobbying trips where I've tried to make the case of getting additional funding for Upper Guadalupe. And my pitch always is, I was a young engineer when I helped deliver the downtown project, and I would like the Upper Guadalupe to happen sometime in my lifetime. Well, I'm 66 years old now, and so I'm not going to say time is running out, but I would really love to be able to make that happen. And I guess also, I'm really interested in what happens with Coyote Creek, because Coyote has flooded so many times in the past. We've heard a number of very, very sad stories from the community, and I don't want people to have to go through that again. I know that as CEO, you don't want to see that happen either. So those are the ones that really come to mind. I will add just one thing. This isn't a project, but this is a problem. The number one problem I hear from, in fact, I just got an email popped up on my iPad, the homeless issues and the fires and some of the activities that go on. It's been very challenging. And I know that you're looking at trying to see about new ways to be able to address this and not be sending community members from, one agency to another, for us to kind of help guide and shape that. Because what's happening right now, it's not humane for the people that are living under those circumstances. And it's very distressing for the community members that have to deal with things like fire and other sorts of things happening in their neighborhood. So thank you for asking the question.
No, thank you, Director Keegan. I always try to say, I know this is Ask the CEO, but I try to make sure people can hear from the directors as well. And so I'm just looking at the time. Albert, do we have any other last minute questions? If not, what I would like to do is maybe close this thing out and give people an opportunity to get to the dinners with their family. Did we have any?
I don't see any questions in the Q&A, and then we're clear on Facebook as well.
All right. So as I'm going to actually, let me go ahead and close out, and then I'll give to Director Keegan to any final last words and comments. I know you've heard me talk a lot about Measure S tonight, and hopefully if you don't know anything about Measure S, you can go to safecleanwater.org and you can see the true benefits of Measure S. But what I do want to do, like I said, I live in this community. I can tell you why me and my family are voting yes on Measure S is because I believe in not only what we do, it's not because I work at this agency, I grew up in this community. I think we need to find a way to make sure that we're providing these health and safety protections for everybody in the Valley. I want to make sure that we're able to clean these blockages out of the creeks, and the creek that I live on. I am part of this Valley. I don't just drop in here and think that these dollars are just going to go willy-nilly everywhere. I care about what we do. I want to see us provide the benefits that you expect from this agency. I can tell you the one thing is that if you elect to make sure this agency is funded, we will make sure that we keep the promises that we've made in the Safe Clean Water to you. I want to make sure that you hold us accountable. You've heard from me. You know how to reach me at ceo@valleywater.org. Hold me accountable. Hold me accountable for my promises. Hold me accountable for what I said that we would do. Hold me accountable for the fact that I said I do want to see us basically be able to deal with the fact that people that have been waiting to deal with the issue that have been flooded and then this long legal process. I want this to end quickly, and I want this to end fairly. That's where I stand. My words, you can hold me to my words. I will do everything I can to make sure that the promises I make to you, that I live to it. I haven't worked in civil rights for so long, so people will say, oh, he's forgetting where he came from, because I have not. I'm still part of this community. I will still be in the fight. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here tonight. I truly appreciate it. Hopefully we'll have the opportunity to meet live when we continue on to have Ask the CEOs in the future. At that, I'm going to turn over to you, Director Keegan, for any closing comment.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone who showed up tonight. We really appreciate hearing from you and listening to your questions. I'd also like to thank our staff. They do such a good job at putting on these virtual meetings. They make it look easy, but I know that it's not. And I also would just like to say, for those of you who have not had the opportunity of meeting our CEO, Mr. Callender, before, I think that he has shown you tonight that he's someone who's a very energetic, take charge, and has a passion for community service. So thank you, Rick. It was a great meeting.
Thank you, Director Keegan, and thank you everyone for joining us.